one can presume that when the angel Gabriel came, he used the high Hebrew tone. He was coming with a supreme message, and working back from the Greek to the Hebrew, we have what probably would have been his words. Shalom Lecha Esheth Chen. Peace to you, woman of grace, which comes through in the Greek as favored one. The root of charis is in there, and kecharitomeni is graced or favored. And then that comes round into the Latin, which hasn't got a verb for to grace, as full of grace, gratia plena, used in the West ever since, many times a day. And the form of the name that we have in the Hebrew is, as it says in the verse, the virgin's name was Miriam, which comes through in the Greek as Chere Mariam. And it is the name that the demons cannot pronounce. On this night, in the new re-established feast, we had a beautiful reading from St. Bernard of Clairvaux on invoking that name and looking up to the star. Respice stellam, invoca Mariam. And the play on words comes from the fact that Maria would be stella maris, the star of the sea in Latin, whatever actually its ancient Hebrew etymological root. We had that over our bed at La Trappe, and we also had another verse from the same sermon put on the massive statue of Our Blessed Lady, Notre Dame de la Confiance, which one of the brethren who I had known erected. It was to thank Our Blessed Lady for protecting miraculously La Trappe during the terrible time that was had at the débarquement nearby in Normandy. And so it is that we had that ipsa protegente non timebis in it. With her protecting you, you will have nothing to fear. And at the end of the day, all the lights went out in the Abbey Church, and the spotlight came on the Blessed Virgin up at the end of the church, at the apse end, and the solemn Cistercian salve would go into the rafters as it had for centuries. The community had gone on, even sometimes in exile, since its foundation in 1142. And it was very Marian. The white, the purity, the liturgy even had our Queen over us at all times. And as one went into the monastery at the front gate, the first thing that one saw was a massive relief of the Queen of Heaven spreading her big mantle over all the brethren. She protected us. And she was a model for us insofar as she was the woman of silence. She spoke little but well, and it was also a model for the monk. And when one speaks little, one speaks a lot with heaven, which is what she was always doing. And she was also a model insofar as she was the tabernacle of the Most High, and in the contemplative life, that is what one is living. living throughout the day, the communion received in the morning with no leakage of spiritual energy. And very early on, I discovered the secret of repeating endlessly the Ave Maria while working. Rosary upon rosary could be said while doing calm, automatic manual work, which goes back to the Desert Fathers who chose simple jobs so the mind might be free to fly. A computer doesn't have the same effect. Why does the demon hate this name? He just talks about that one when she comes up in any conversation with him. And every Ave Maria said with devotion is one more thump on his head. Hence he is keen on getting the rosary out of the hands of the little people, and he is fairly successful as a rule, because people do not realize that little humility would be far better than spiritual pride, which says, I don't find it helpful. It's repetitious. I need other forms of prayer. And they're not afraid of borrowing on other spiritualities, even of a New Age type. But Our Lady just repeated each time at Fatima, 5 decades of the Rosary, each day. And she wanted all on earth to use it. It is interesting that way before the war broke out in the Ukraine, she had appeared there. And she had appeared over a church that had been under Rome, but of Eastern Rite. And it was interesting that there, just before it was turned into a communist museum, which was the plan, she stopped that and also requested that there should be the rosary said by all. That is interesting in the Ukraine. And she also did give a prophecy that one day the Ukraine would be instrumental in the conversion of Russia. It's interesting that at Garabandal, one of the prophecies that came through was that communism would return. That was inexplicable in the 60s because it hadn't gone away. But we know from Fatima that eventually Russia will be converted and that her Immaculate Heart will triumph and that a period of peace will follow for the world. But we need to be simple and humble enough to listen to the advice of the Queen of Heaven and take into our hearts the Rosary, and to use well also the holy name of Mary as we must that of her Divine Son, for the abuse of holy names is a Catholic thing and should never ever happen. We need to respect the person that is claimed under a name. When we call each other by name, we have a certain intimacy and connaissance of the other. It's the same with heaven. It is interesting that it has been said that by now Satan is no longer allowed to use the word Lucifer, because it was the name that he had before his fall. He is referred to now as Satan, the adversary. We claim, therefore, the holy name of Mary. In the old liturgical books, her name, along that of her son, is printed in capital letters, and actually still in the present Missal. The priest still vows at the holy name of Mary and of Jesus and of the saint of the day. These little things make preparation with the same body and the tongue that hurts those who are hurt by the abuse of what is sacred. The angel Gabriel from heaven came. His wings as drifted snow, his eyes as unto me, Emmanuel, pursues foretold. Most highly favored Lady, glorious. Then gently Mary meekly bowed her head. To me be as it pleases God, she said. My soul shall laud and magnify his holy name. Most highly favored Lady, glorious.